Story 1, The Keeper of Shenandoah. The first thing Elliot Kane noticed about Shenandoah was how the fog breathed. It wasn't static like city smog, it pulsed, curling across the ridges as though some enormous creature were sleeping beneath the Blue Ridge Mountains. He parked his Jeep at the ranger outpost near Big Meadows, killed the engine, and let the silence press in. No traffic, no horns. No radio chatter, just wind moving through pine and the faint hiss of drizzle on the roof. He had traded sirens for birdsong, concrete for timber, guilt for wilderness. At least, that's what he told himself when he took the ranger post. Inside the outpost, fluorescent lights hummed like angry bees. Margaret Holt, everyone called her Maggie, was leaning over a topo map, tracing a contour line with a calloused finger. Her uniform looked older than he was, green shirt faded to sage, patches frayed. A thermos steamed beside her. "Morning," Elliot said, shaking off the damp from his jacket. She didn't look up. "Evenin', actually. You're on night rotation. Fog like this, the forest starts early." He glanced at the wall clock. 5:12 p.m., though outside already looked like dusk. Swallowed by milk. Maggie finally met his eyes, gray, sharp, measuring. "You're the new one from D.C., right?" "City cop." "Was," he corrected. "Long story." She grunted. "Out here. Long stories belong to the trees." A radio crackled from the desk, dispatch's voice muffled through static. "Unit 12, possible missing hiker near mile marker 41. Caller reports an abandoned pack-off. Skyline Drive. Female, 17, Lila Monroe." Maggie's head snapped toward the radio. "That's Weaver Hollow territory." Elliot frowned. "Problem with that?" Her silence was answer enough. Then, "Locals say that Hollow doesn't like visitors after dark." He gave a half-smile. "I thought this was our park." She poured coffee into a tin cup, black as tar. "Then you don't know Shenandoah yet." By the time he reached his truck, rain had thickened into silver wires. Headlights cut shallow through fog that seemed to thicken in defiance. Skyline Drive unspooled like a wet ribbon, hemmed by trees that leaned too close, as if listening. He checked his GPS once. Lost signal after 2 turns. Half a mile in, the beam caught something bright against the mud, a backpack. He stopped, crouched. The name tag, half washed out, read Lila M. Inside, an empty water bottle, a dead phone, and a sketchbook. The pages were soaked, ink bleeding, but one drawing stood out, a spiral. Carved over and over, radiating from an eyeless human figure. The paper felt warm. He blinked, shook rain from his lashes. It was just his imagination, he told himself. A whisper slid through the fog. "Elliot." He froze. The sound was unmistakably his own voice, distorted, distant. He spun in a slow circle, flashlight slicing pale halos through mist. Nothing but dripping branches. Somewhere far off, an owl shrieked, then silence again. He keyed the radio. "Dispatch, this is Ranger Kane. I've located the missing hiker's pack near mile 41. Proceeding northbound on foot." Static replied, then a faint echo of his own transmission repeated back, syllable by syllable. "Proceeding northbound, northbound." The signal died. He tightened his grip on the flashlight. Great start, Kane. The forest swallowed the road after the first bend. Roots writhed through the path like veins. A wooden sign leaned sideways ahead, letters nearly rotted away. But he made them out. "Weaver Hollow, 1/2 me." A breeze shifted. The scent changed, from rain and soil to something metallic, almost coppery. He followed it. Down in the hollow, fog pulled thicker. Then milk. Shapes appeared and disappeared, old fences, stone foundations, the skeletons of cabins reclaimed by moss. In the center stood one cabin still upright, windows boarded but faint orange. light leaking through the slats. He approached slowly. The air hummed. Somewhere within, a man's voice chanted, low, rhythmic, in a language that bent around his ears but refused to make sense. "Caleb Weaver?" Elliot called out. The chant stopped. The door creaked open an inch, revealing a face lit by candlelight, deep-set eyes, hollow cheeks, beard matted with dew. Caleb Weaver looked. Half human, half specter. "You shouldn't have come," Caleb rasped. "I'm with Park Service," Elliot said, flashing his badge. "Looking for a missing girl. Lila Monroe." Caleb's gaze flicked to the darkness behind Elliot. "She heard the hollow ones. You'll hear them too. I just need to know if you saw her." Caleb stepped aside. Inside, the cabin smelled of wet wood and something fouler, sap. Mixed with blood. Dozens of twig figures hung from the ceiling, each dripping thick black resin onto bowls arranged in a circle. In the center, a stone slab crusted with dried moss and red stains. On the slab lay a shape wrapped in tarp. Elliot's pulse spiked. "What the hell is that?" Caleb's lips moved soundlessly. The candles flared blue. The tarp shifted. A hand, pale, trembling, slid free. Fingers twitching. Elliot rushed forward, tearing the tarp open. Lila Monroe blinked up at him, eyes unfocused, pupils glowing faintly as though reflecting unseen fire. Her mouth moved, whispering a single phrase again and again. "They need a keeper, they need a keeper." He turned on Caleb. "What did you do to her?" Caleb backed against the wall, eyes wild. "The blood moon comes tonight. Someone must take the mark. If no one does, the hollow ones walk." Lightning flashed through the window boards, and for an instant Elliot saw shapes outside, tall silhouettes, eyeless, their limbs bending backward as they moved through the mist. A thunderclap followed like a cannon. The candles snuffed out. He dragged Lila toward the door, but she convulsed, nails digging into his sleeve with inhuman strength. Her voice deepened, layered, more than one voice speaking through her. "You can't leave. The hollow must have balance." The words vibrated the air. The carvings on the walls began to glow faintly, spirals pulsing like heartbeats. A drip of black sap struck Elliot's hand, it burned cold, leaving a red welt. He pulled her free and stumbled into the storm. Outside, the fog moved against the wind, coiling around them like smoke underwater. Shapes emerged again, slender, faceless figures forming a half-circle. Not solid, but denser than mist. Their presence pressed on his skull like pressure change before lightning. He raised his flashlight, the beam cut straight through them. The nearest one tilted its head. Its surface shimmered like wet bark. "Stay back," he shouted, though his voice came out thin. A crimson light flared above, somewhere unseen, the clouds reflecting blood-colored moonlight through the storm. The figures turned toward it as if summoned. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they scattered into vapor. Lila collapsed into the mud. Her eyes returned to normal, though she was shivering violently. Elliot scooped her up, ran back toward the road. Behind them, the cabin's door slammed shut on its own. Through the cracks, a single candle flickered to life. Hours later, at the ranger station, Maggie waited. Elliot carried Lila inside, pale and silent but breathing. Maggie's expression didn't change, though her hand tightened on the radio. "You went into Weaver Hollow." He nodded. "I told you not to. There was a girl in there, Maggie. And a man, Caleb Weaver. Some kind of ritual. He said something about a blood moon." Maggie closed her eyes. "Then it's begun again." He frowned. "What's begun?" She walked to a locked cabinet, opened it, and pulled out an old, leather-bound ledger, edges charred. On the cover, Park Keeper Log, 1893. "Every few decades," she said quietly, "the hollow chooses someone to bear the mark. The Weavers were keepers once. My family helped seal the rift with their blood. Elliot stared, rain dripping from his hair onto the floorboards. Tell me you don't believe that. She met his gaze, eyes glinting with something between fear and pity. I know it. And if Caleb's been calling again, the hollow's hungry. Thunder rumbled above the ridge. The station lights flickered. Maggie whispered, almost to herself, you brought her back, but you might have brought them with you. Elliot stepped outside for air. The storm had thinned to mist, but the fog still clung low, glowing faintly under the moon's red hue breaking through the clouds. From the tree-line, a shape moved, tall, still, watching. He blinked. Gone. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A new video notification. He opened it. It was footage of him, recorded from above, walking through the fog toward the cabin. The red light from his flashlight flickered, and for a second, in the video static frame, a shadow behind him looked like it was reaching out. He stared at the screen until it went black. Behind him, the forest whispered his name. The park never truly slept. Even after midnight, the mountains murmured, branches creaked like bones, the wind whistled through hollow trunks, and something deeper moved beneath the fog. Steady as breath. Elliot sat alone in the ranger station's rec room, staring at the faint glow of the old ledger Maggie had given him. The parchment smelled of mold and pine pitch. Each entry was written in cramped cursive, patrol logs, animal sightings, weather notes, until the handwriting changed, slanting downward as though the writer's hand trembled. June 12, 1893, the hollow called. We answered. One must bleed to bind. The forest keeps what we owe. A smear of brown, blood, maybe, obscured the last line. He shut the book. From the bunk room, Lila moaned softly in. Her sleep. Maggie had wrapped her in wool blankets, a first aid kit open beside the cot. The girl's pulse was steady, but her temperature kept shifting, skin burning then chilling within minutes. Maggie entered carrying 2 mugs. Chamomile, she said. Best I can offer. Elliot took one, hand still trembling. You're telling me this park chooses people? She sat across from him. The stories go back to the Monacan tribes, something buried beneath Weaver Hollow. My grandmother said it was a rift, a wound in the world. The Weavers built their cabins around it. Thought they could contain it with blood offerings. Human offerings? Maggie's gaze drifted to the window, where fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. They called it keeping. Once every few generations, the hollow marks someone to stand guard. The mark's what keeps the rift sealed. And Caleb thought it was Lila? Now she looked back at him. Caleb thought it was you. Elliot laughed under his breath. Because I showed up at the wrong time in the wrong place? Because you touched the carvings. The mark knows blood and intent. He rubbed the welt on his hand where the black sap had burned. The skin around it had darkened to a faint spiral, like a bruise that refused to fade. Maggie rose. The moon hit its peak in 40 minutes. If the Weaver's rituals were right, that's when the hollow ones cross. Either someone offers blood willingly, she hesitated. Or they take what they need. Lightning flashed across the valley, momentarily painting the trees in white flame. Elliot stood. Then we stop them. Maggie shook her head. You don't stop a flood. You channel it. She walked to the gun cabinet and pulled out an old service rifle, chambering around. But we can make sure the wrong people don't get swept away. They drove in silence along Skyline Drive, tires hissing through shallow streams of rain. Lila slept in the back seat, head lolling against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Every few minutes, she whispered in her sleep, words Elliot couldn't quite make out. Maggie's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. We'll take the maintenance road down to the hollow. The old altar's near the stone spring. Elliot checked his flashlight, then the sidearm he'd kept since DC. You've done this before. I've seen it done, she said. Last time, my brother took the mark. 1987. Blood moon same as this one. He lasted 3 years before the forest took him. What do you mean, took him? She glanced at him. You ever notice how some trails vanish after storms? Like the land just decides it doesn't want them anymore? He didn't ask further. As they descended, the fog thickened until the headlights became 2 pale orbs floating through darkness. Then the engine coughed, sputtered, and died. Damn it, Maggie muttered. Turning the key again. Nothing. Elliot stepped out to check the hood. The air was electric, humming with faint vibration, like standing near a high-voltage line. The forest around them was utterly still, no crickets, no wind, just pressure. A low drone rose from the distance, mechanical yet wrong. Red lights glowed through the mist, a drone hovering 20 feet above the road. Is that yours? He asked. Maggie shook her head. Ours don't have red optics. The drone tilted, camera lens focusing on them. A moment later, Elliot's phone buzzed in his pocket. The screen displayed a live feed from the drone, showing the 2 of them framed dead center. Then static. He turned the phone off. Let's move on foot. They followed the trail downward until the trees parted into a natural amphitheater of rock and moss. At its center stood a stone slab blackened with age, surrounded by circles of carved symbols. Rain pooled in the grooves like veins of mercury. Lila stirred, eyes fluttering open. We're here, she murmured, voice layered again, one tone hers, another deeper. Maggie gripped her shoulder. Stay with me, kid. Lila's pupils reflected crimson moonlight, filtering through the clouds. He's waiting. Who? Elliot asked. The one you replaced. A gust of wind burst through the clearing, extinguishing their lanterns. Elliot raised his flashlight, and froze. Figures stood at the tree line. Dozens. Not fully formed, as if carved from fog and ash. Their heads tilted in unison. From each chest glowed a dull ember pulsing with the same rhythm as his. Mark. The air smelled of sap and iron. Maggie lifted the rifle. Back to the car. The nearest figure glided forward, feet not touching the ground. Elliot fired once, the bullet tearing through. Vapor. The figure shuddered but reformed, smoke curling around the wound. Lila stepped forward, trance-like. They don't want me. Lila, stop. Elliot grabbed her arm. Her skin was ice cold. They want balance. The hollow bleeds if no keeper stands. Maggie aimed at the altar. Then we give it what it wants. Before Elliot could ask, she drew a hunting knife, sliced her palm, and pressed it to the stone. The carvings ignited red. The wraiths recoiled, hissing in a chorus that sounded like trees snapping. Maggie gasped, knees buckling. It's too strong. Elliot caught her, pressing his hand over hers. The moment his blood touched hers on the stone, the mark on his palm flared, burning like molten glass. A blinding light erupted. The ground trembled. He heard voices, hundreds whispering over each other, impossible to separate, all speaking through him. Images flooded his mind, rivers reversing flow, animals bowing before fire, the hollow beneath. The earth pulsing like a heart. Then silence. When his vision cleared, the clearing was empty. The fog had lifted, moonlight filtering pure and white through broken clouds. The wraiths were gone. Maggie lay beside him, pale but breathing. Her wound had sealed into a faint scar. Lila knelt at the edge of the slab, eyes clear for the first time. It's quiet now. Elliot looked at his palm. The spiral had darkened into a scar that faintly glowed when moonlight touched it. What happened? Maggie coughed weakly. You finished it. You're the keeper now. He shook his head. No. We destroyed the ritual. She smiled faintly. That was the ritual. He felt the forest around him shift, as if acknowledging him. Every sound, every breath of wind seemed tied to his pulse. Far off, a lone coyote howled, and the echo felt like it came from inside his chest. Lila stood, stepping toward him. You'll see them again. In the fog. They'll watch. They'll wait. But they won't cross as long as you breathe. And when I don't? Then the hollow will choose another. She turned away, walking toward the tree line. The mist opened for her, parting like curtains. Lila, he called, but she didn't look back. When he reached where she'd gone, there were no footprints, just damp leaves and silence. Maggie struggled to her feet. She's part of it now. Some people walk out of the hollow different. Elliot looked up at the clearing's edge where the fog shimmered faintly red before fading into silver. What happens to me? Maggie's expression softened. You keep watch. Until it calls again. They climbed back toward the road as dawn began to bleed over the ridgeline. The forest seemed calmer, the mist drifting thin like steam over cold earth. Birds began to sing, a hesitant chorus after a long silence. At the jeep, Maggie's radio flickered alive. Station 12 to all units. Visibility returning. Unidentified electrical storm over. Weaver Hollow subsiding. Elliot leaned against the hood, exhausted. His phone buzzed once more, battery at 2%. A notification, new video saved. He opened it. The footage showed him and Maggie at the altar, but from high above, like before. The red drone hovered, silent. Then, as he and Maggie placed their hands on the stone, the lens panned closer, too close, until the entire screen filled with the spiral mark now etched on his palm. Then static. The screen glitched once, showing a final frame, his own face, eyes black, whispering something he couldn't hear. The file deleted itself. He powered off the phone. If I ever say I'm getting used to this place, shoot me. Maggie chuckled, voice hoarse. You'll fit right in. As the sun broke through, the fog burned away in golden ribbons, revealing valleys lush and impossibly green. For a moment, the park looked untouched, innocent. But when Elliot glanced toward the tree line one last time, he saw them, silhouettes deep in the forest, watching from the haze. Not moving. Simply waiting. He blinked, and they were gone. The fog returned 3 nights later. Not the soft morning kind that wandered through valleys like steam, but a living tide that rolled over the ridges and blotted out the moon. Elliot had started to recognize its rhythm, the faint electric hum before it formed, the metallic taste in the air. The way the crickets went quiet as if holding their breath. He'd been assigned temporary quarters in a ranger cabin above Hawksbill Gap. The place creaked with every gust. Logs swelled with moisture, and sap bled from cracks like old wounds. He hadn't slept more than an hour since the ritual. Every time his eyes closed, the same dream came, standing on the stone altar. Blood running down his arm into the grooves, the valley below him whispering his name. He'd wake with the mark on his palm glowing faintly red. Tonight, thunder crawled across the ridges. He tried distracting himself with routine, checking maps, logging wildlife reports, but the radio hissed softly even when turned off. Static formed shapes of words. Keeper, balance, listen. He dropped the mic, heart hammering. No, he muttered. You're done. You're not part of this. Outside, branches scraped the roof like fingernails. Something knocked, 3 slow raps, at the front door. Elliot unholstered his pistol, moved quietly to the window. Nothing but mist pressing against the glass. Then came the second knock, softer, like bone on wood. He yanked the door open. A figure stood there, human-shaped, soaked head to toe, but the fog blurred its features. For a moment, he thought it was Lila. Then the shape tilted its head, and the movement was wrong, too smooth. Too deliberate. Who's there? He demanded. No answer. The thing lifted a hand and pressed it flat against his chest. Cold shot through his body like plunging into icy water. His vision flickered, images overlapping, forests burning, rivers reversing, eyes staring from tree bark. He stumbled back, the figure dissolved into fog. Elliot slammed the door, gasping. His palm burned. When he looked, the spiral mark was bleeding, not red but black, like ink seeping from beneath the skin. He staggered to the sink, ran cold water, scrubbed until his hands stung raw. The mark refused to fade. A low voice drifted from the darkness behind him. It won't wash off. He spun. Maggie Holt stood in the doorway, rain slicker dripping onto the floor. Her eyes looked older than before, ringed with sleeplessness. You drove here in this? He asked, still catching his breath. The fog's moving wrong, she said. Not coming from the valley this time. It's coming down from the ridges. That means something woke up. Elliot swallowed hard. You think it's the hollow ones? I think you need to see what's happening to the park. They drove through night that had forgotten how to end. The headlights could barely pierce 20 feet ahead. Beyond that, shadows rippled like water. At the overlook near Barefence Mountain, Maggie parked. Look. She whispered. Below, the valley glowed faintly red, thin lines of light threading through the forest like veins. The same spiral pattern, immense and pulsing. Earthquakes? Elliot asked. Though he already knew the answer. Energy from the rift, she said. When you took the mark, it sealed the breach. But something's feeding from your side of it now. Elliot felt dizziness wash over him. How? Maybe that drone you saw wasn't just a drone. She pulled a folder from her bag, printouts, screenshots. Park Service security caught similar ones last month. No registration. No signal source. Always hovering near the hollow. Someone studying it. Or worshipping it. He flipped through the photos. One frame froze his breath, a hooded figure standing on the same stone altar, arms raised toward a red glow. Behind it, faintly visible through fog, was his own silhouette, recorded from a distance, though he hadn't been there. That's impossible, he said. Maggie looked grim. Maybe not. The hollow bends time. Those recordings could be from the next moon. They reached the trailhead near Weaver Hollow just before dawn. The fog here didn't move, it pulsed, breathing in sync with the wind. Whatever's happening, Maggie said, loading her rifle, it's not over. The balance is breaking again. Elliot checked his pistol, the metal slick with condensation. If it wants me, it can damn well tell me itself. As they descended, the forest grew wrong. Trees twisted at angles that hurt the eye. Bark peeled back in spirals, revealing veins of dark resin that throbbed like arteries. Whispers followed them, flitting from trunk to trunk. Maggie froze suddenly. Do you hear that? Elliot tilted his head. Beneath the whispering was another sound, a slow, rhythmic chant. Not human. The syllables crawled along his skin like insects. They crept forward until the trail opened into the same clearing as before. The altar stood there. But now its surface was covered with dozens of new carvings, fresh, wet, almost bleeding. And someone knelt beside it. Caleb Weaver. He looked half dead, eyes hollow, clothes crusted with dried sap. He was carving new symbols into the stone with a bone knife. Maggie raised her rifle. Caleb. Step away. He didn't flinch. The hollow won't stay fed, he rasped. Your keeper's too weak. The rift's reopening. Elliot stepped forward. What are you doing? Preparing the exchange. Caleb's gaze locked on him. You're marked, but not bound. You resisted the call. Now it hunts for another. It'll take what you love, what you fear. That's its nature. Elliot's voice cracked. You mean Lila? Caleb smiled, a broken, cracked lip smile. She walks the borders. Half spirit. Half memory. When the moon rises, she'll open the way. Lightning split the sky, revealing a massive sigil burned into the clearing floor, spirals within spirals, all pointing toward the altar. The red light from the valley below surged upward through the cracks, bathing them in blood hue. Maggie shouted, "Get back," and fired. The shot tore through Caleb's shoulder. He staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he pressed his bleeding hand to the sigil, smearing crimson into the lines. The earth groaned. A gust of wind slammed through the clearing, knocking Maggie off her feet. Elliot lunged for her, but the ground beneath them split open, revealing darkness that pulsed like a heartbeat. From it came tendrils of mist that solidified into clawed hands. Caleb screamed, body convulsing as the fog enveloped him, dragging him downward. "Run!" Maggie yelled. They sprinted uphill as the hollow behind them caved inward. The forest bent, trees tearing from roots without sound. Halfway up the trail, Elliot turned back, and froze. Standing at the edge of the collapse was Lila. Her eyes glowed faint blue this time, her face calm. She mouthed something, too distant to hear, but he understood. "Help me." Then the ground consumed her. By sunrise, the storm had passed. The valley below looked unchanged, no crater, no sigil, no sign of the rift. Only stillness. Maggie leaned against a tree, trembling. If the rift swallowed itself, we might have bought time. Elliot's voice was hollow. "She's gone." "Maybe not." She pointed to his palm. The spiral mark now glowed faint blue instead of red. It's still linked. She's somewhere in between. If the hollow fed on her, it can still release her when balance returns. Elliot stared toward the valley, mist rising like smoke from invisible fires. "Then we find a way to bring her back." Maggie exhaled slowly. "That's not how it works, Kane. You are the keeper now. That means you don't rescue anyone. You make sure the door stays shut." He turned toward her, eyes dark with defiance. "Then maybe it's time someone changed the rules." That night, alone again in the ranger cabin, Elliot replayed the footage from his body cam, footage he didn't remember starting. It showed the clearing, Caleb's chanting, the sigil. But when the rift opened, the camera caught one impossible frame. Lila, standing beside him, whispering directly into his ear. "You can unbind it. Blood for blood. Keeper for soul." The video ended with a single still image, his own face staring back. Mouth open, whispering the same words. Outside, the wind shifted. The fog was back, pale blue under a thin crescent moon. Elliot opened the door and stepped out, the mark on his palm glowing brighter. Somewhere down in the valley, something called, not with words, but with the ache of distance, of something unfinished. He tightened his jacket, grabbed the flashlight, and began walking toward Weaver Hollow once more. The forest didn't wait for him to decide. By the time Elliot reached Weaver Hollow again, the fog had already thickened into something tactile, fibers in the air. Threads he could feel against his skin. Each step muffled sound, as though the world were wrapped in wet cotton. The trail was gone. He followed instinct, or maybe the pull of the mark, down into the valley. The spiral on his palm glowed faintly blue, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Halfway down, his radio burst alive, a single whisper. "Turn back." He froze. "Maggie?" Static. Then a different voice, Lila's. "Don't let them see your eyes." The signal died. He pressed on. At the base of the hollow, time lost coherence. The trees had changed, taller, bark smooth like bone. Their branches curved inward, forming an arch over a clearing filled with drifting ash. The altar stood where it always did, but it was cracked open down the center like a split heart. He circled it slowly. Inside the crack, faint blue light pulsed like breath. Then, from the fog beyond, came the sound of bare feet dragging through wet leaves. "Lila?" She stepped out from between the trees. Same torn jacket, same pale face, but her eyes were pure white now, glowing faintly. She looked fragile, almost translucent, like moonlight poured into human shape. "Elliot," she said softly. "You shouldn't have come. I'm not leaving you here." "This isn't here," she whispered. "You're between. It pulls you where it wants." He reached for her, but his hand passed through her arm as if through mist. The mark on his palm flared brighter. "Tell me how to get you out." "You can't free me. Not without breaking the seal." "Then tell me how." She hesitated, voice trembling. "The hollow feeds on memory. That's how it keeps the door shut. You'll have to give it what it wants, everything you remember before this place. Your name, your past. Your reason to stay." He clenched his jaw. "And if I do? Then I go free, and you take my place." The ground shook. From behind her, shadows bloomed, tall, twisting silhouettes that seemed carved from the same fog, their limbs impossibly long. The hollow ones. They didn't walk, they glided. "Go," she cried. "They've seen you." Elliot turned, running uphill. The mist thickened into walls, closing around him. Every direction looked the same. He could hear their movement, wet, scraping, like roots tearing through soil. The mark on his hand burned again, urging him forward. Ahead, the fog split to reveal a path of black stones leading to a second clearing, one he hadn't seen before. At its center stood a massive tree, dead and hollow, its trunk blackened with old fire. Hanging from its branches were dozens of twig effigies, some shaped like people, others like animals. They swayed though no wind blew. Elliot slowed, stepping beneath the tree. The air here vibrated like a live wire. On the trunk, carved deep, was a spiral identical to his mark, only inverted. "Keeper," said a voice from above. He looked up. One of the effigies moved. A head turned. It wasn't made of wood, it was Caleb Weaver, suspended upside down, his eyes open and glowing. "You're crossing," Caleb hissed. "You can't stay long. The hollow will claim flesh to replace what it lost. Tell me how to save her." "By surrendering what makes you you." Caleb coughed, black fluid dripping from his mouth. "That's the only trait it understands." Elliot stepped back, shaking his head. "No. There's another way." "There never is," Caleb whispered. His neck snapped like a branch, and his body stilled, swaying gently. The mark on Elliot's palm pulsed once, hard, and then pain exploded through him. He fell to his knees as blue light spilled from the wound, forming tendrils that snaked outward and vanished into the air. Voices filled his mind. Fragments of memory, his apartment in D.C., his partner's laughter, sirens, the sound of a gunshot, blood on his hands. He screamed, clutching his head. "Stop." But the forest listened only to itself. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the clearing. He stood in his old police precinct. The air smelled of burnt coffee and floor wax. His badge lay on the desk, stained. The clock on the wall ticked backward. He heard a voice behind him, Captain Moran. "You think you can run from what you did?" Elliot turned. The captain's face was gone, just smooth skin where eyes and mouth should be. "We all keep something, Kane. You just made it official." He stumbled back. The mark on his hand bled blue light through his glove. The precinct walls melted into fog, and the captain's body twisted, elongating, becoming one of them. Elliot drew his pistol, fired twice. The bullets vanished into mist. "Give it up," the thing said in a dozen voices. "You belong here." He ran, through doors that led nowhere, down hallways that looped back into the same room. The mark pulsed harder, guiding him like a compass. Finally, a door appeared ahead, wooden, carved with the same spiral. He kicked it open, and stumbled back into the clearing. The altar had sealed itself again. Lila stood beside it, eyes softer now, color returning to her cheeks. "You came through," she said. "What the hell was that?" "The hollow shows you your anchor. The thing it needs to cut loose." "My past." She nodded. "Now it's fading from you." He tried to recall his apartment. His partner's name, nothing. The memories were hollowed out, blurred by fog. "You traded them," Lila said gently. "That's the price. I can leave now." "You'll stay." He looked down at his palm. The spiral had turned white, glowing faint as morning frost. "Then go," he said quietly. "Get out while you still can." She touched his face. "You'll still see me. Every dawn, in the mist." "Promise me something," he said. "If you ever hear the hollow calling again, don't answer." Lila smiled sadly. "It never calls twice for the same soul." The light around her brightened until she dissolved into air, leaving only the faint echo of her voice, "Thank you." The fog thinned. Birdsong returned, timid at first, then swelling. The forest seemed to exhale, releasing something it had held too long. Elliot sank against a fallen log, breathing hard. His head was empty, like a page wiped clean. He couldn't even remember what city he'd come from. Only the sound of the park, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a hawk, the rhythm of his own pulse. He rose, turning toward the ridge. Morning light spilled through the trees, and for the first time in days, it didn't feel hostile. Still, when he looked back at the altar, he saw movement, his own shadow lingering on the stone even though the light was behind him. It lifted its hand and traced a spiral in the air. Then it vanished. By the time he reached the outpost, Maggie was waiting on the porch. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "You went back." He nodded. "Did you find her?" He hesitated. "She's gone." "Gone where?" He met her eyes. "Somewhere I can't follow." She nodded slowly, as though she'd expected the answer. "The hollow keeps its bargains." He sank onto the step beside her. "I can't remember much anymore. Feels like I've been here my whole life." "Maybe that's for the best," she said. "The forest doesn't want keepers who remember too much." They sat in silence while the fog drifted away down the valley. When the sun finally cleared the ridge, its light caught the side of the ranger station. For an instant, the reflection formed a faint spiral pattern, white, almost invisible, spinning slowly before fading. Maggie saw it too. She didn't speak. Inside, the radio crackled to life. A new voice came through, young, uncertain. "Dispatch to Station 12. Reporting a missing hiker near Skyline Drive. Name's Eric Monroe. 17. Last seen heading toward Weaver Hollow." Elliot stared at the microphone. The mark on his palm shimmered faintly, reacting. Maggie's breath caught. "Don't answer it." He stood, hand hovering over the transmitter. The forest outside went still. Then, softly, he pressed the button. "Unit 12. Copy that. I'm on my way." The fog came earlier than it should have. Elliot stood at the overlook above Skyline Drive, morning coffee cooling in his hand. Down below, the valley looked peaceful, sunlight pooling between folds of forest, autumn leaves bright as flame. But when the wind shifted, he caught that same metallic tang again, the one that meant they were waking. He didn't need the radio to tell him what was coming. He'd felt it in his blood long before dispatch called. Unit 12, confirm status on the missing person search, Eric Monroe. 17. Monroe. The name hit like a punch behind the ribs. Lila's brother. Elliot set the mug down, wiped his hands on his uniform, and picked up the mic. Copy. Heading out now. The park was quiet, unnaturally so. No birds, no distant traffic from the Blue Ridge Parkway, only the low hum of power lines dissolving into the mist. He parked near the trailhead at mile marker 41, the same stretch where he'd found Lila's pack weeks ago. The signpost had rotted through, collapsed sideways. Someone, maybe a tourist, had carved a spiral into the exposed wood. Maggie's voice rasped from behind him. I knew you'd answer it. He turned. She looked smaller than before, pale, shoulders stooped. You shouldn't be here, he said. And let you walk into Weaver Hollow alone. Again? She gave a humorless laugh. You think I don't know how this ends? I've seen 3 keepers before you. Elliot slung his pack over one shoulder. Then tell me how to stop it. She hesitated. You can't stop it. You just decide what the forest keeps. They followed the same trail, though it had changed, roots curling across the path like grasping hands, stones slick with black moss. Around them, fog thickened into slow-moving curtains. Somewhere far off, thunder muttered. Maggie stopped beside a dead oak. Its trunk was hollowed, the inside carved with symbols, new ones. Clean and wet, as if etched that morning. Someone's been here, she said. Elliot crouched, brushing mud from a footprint. Smaller shoe size. Eric. Or something using his shape. A whisper floated through the trees. Elliot. He froze. It wasn't Lila's voice this time, it was his own, repeating, warped by distance. Don't listen, Maggie warned. That's how the hollow finds the cracks in you. They reached the valley floor near dusk. The air pressed heavier here, rich with the smell of rain and iron. At the center of the clearing, the altar waited, whole again, as though it had never been split. Blue moss glowed faintly around its base. Elliot approached, scanning the tree line. Eric, he shouted. No answer. Then movement, a figure stepping from the fog, flashlight trembling in his hand. 17, lanky, terrified. Eric Monroe. He ran toward them. Are you rangers? Please, you have to help. She's here, I saw my sister. Maggie's hand gripped Elliot's arm. It's bait. But the boy's panic felt too real, mud streaked across his face, breath hitching. She called me. Said she needed me to come. I can hear her even now. Elliot's stomach turned cold. You can unbind it. Blood for blood. Keeper for soul. He knelt. Where did you see her? Eric pointed toward the altar. There. Inside the light. Elliot followed his gaze, and saw it. A shimmer above the stone, like heat mirage, within which a faint outline moved, a girl's silhouette, hair floating as if underwater. Lila, he whispered. Maggie stepped between them. It's not her anymore. The light brightened, swallowing the clearing in blue fire. Wind held from nowhere, scattering leaves like sparks. The sigils on the ground reignited, forming a spiral. That circled the 3 of them. Eric screamed as invisible force dragged him toward the altar. Elliot lunged, catching the boy's wrist. The pull was immense, like gravity itself. His mark flared. White, veins glowing through his arm. Let me go. Eric shouted. She says it's okay. Maggie fought against the wind, shouting something he couldn't hear. Then a branch snapped above them. And the forest erupted, figures materializing from fog, dozens of hollow ones ringed around the clearing. They moved closer, silent, each motion bending light. Elliot! Maggie screamed. The mark, give it what it wants. He looked down at Eric, then at the silhouette trapped in the blue glow. Lila's face hovered there, sad, pleading. Help him. He understood. Without thinking, he sliced his palm across the spiral. Blood hit the stone and hissed like steam. The hollow ones froze. The wind died. The blue light expanded once, then imploded inward, dragging sound, air, and fog with it. The world went black. He woke to birdsong. The clearing was gone. Only open meadow remained, grass bending gently in the morning breeze. Maggie knelt beside him, face streaked with tears and mud. It's sealed, she whispered. Whatever you did, it closed. He sat up slowly. Where's Eric? She looked away. Gone. He searched the meadow, no footprints, no altar, no body. Only a faint spiral pressed into the soil, already fading with the wind. He traded places, Maggie said softly. Every keeper needs a witness. Every door needs a lock. Elliot stared at his hand. The mark had vanished. His skin was smooth, pale, unscarred. Then it's over. Maggie shook her head. Not for you. The park doesn't forget who kept its secrets. They climbed the ridge in silence. From above, Shenandoah looked almost ordinary again, valleys rolling under a pale sky, mist burning off like smoke. At the ranger outpost, Maggie poured 2 cups of black coffee. She set one in front of him, hands trembling. When my brother sealed it, he said he heard the forest whisper thank you. Did you? Elliot shook his head. All I heard was quiet. That's the loudest it ever gets. He took a long sip. The bitterness steadied him. When he looked up, Maggie was staring past him, eyes wide. Elliot, your shadow. He turned. On the wall behind him, the light from the window stretched their silhouettes long, and in his, the head wasn't his own. It was Lila's. That night, Elliot stayed alone in the cabin. He tried to write a report but the words came out wrong. Letters bending into spirals across the page. The radio clicked on by itself. Unit 12? Weaver Hollow clear. Balance restored. Then static, and beneath it, faint breathing. He switched it off. Outside, fog rolled down from the ridge again, soft as silk. It pulled around the porch, glowing faintly silver in moonlight. Somewhere deep in the valley, a coyote howled. He almost thought it spoke his name. He stepped outside, letting the mist touch his face. For the first time, it didn't feel cold. It felt like recognition. He whispered into it, voice steady. I'll keep watch. The fog stirred, folding around him like a cloak. The spiral on his wall faded, leaving only empty wood. By dawn, the cabin was empty. The door swung open in the morning breeze. Inside, a single line was carved into the desk. The forest keeps what we owe. The first snow came early that year. It dusted the Blue Ridge Mountains like powdered glass, settling into the hollows where fog usually slept. The tourists were gone, the cabins shuttered, and Shenandoah belonged once more to the things that moved unseen. 3 weeks had passed since the night the valley went quiet. Maggie Holt was the only one who still came up to the overlook. She said it helped her remember which parts of the story were real. Sometimes, when the wind shifted, she swore she could hear footsteps in the frost, slow, deliberate, always stopping when she turned. She told herself it was just the forest stretching. At headquarters, the official report on the Monroe incident filled 7 pages. It listed missing persons, Eric Monroe, 17, Elliot Kane, 28. Weather conditions, dense fog, low visibility. Outcome, search inconclusive. Nothing about the mark. Nothing about the altar. Nothing about the way the fog had whispered keeper. Maggie signed the last page and locked the file in the cabinet with the others, 1932, 1956, 1987, and now 2025. 4 keepers in the park's history. 4 names that never left the mountain. That night, she returned to the ranger cabin one last time. Elliot's coffee mug still sat on the desk. Ring of dust where it had cooled. The radio, long unplugged, clicked once as she entered. Maggie. She froze. Static filled the room, shaping itself into words. Patrol complete, balance. Holds. Her throat tightened. Elliot? The door is shut. Then silence. She crossed to the window. The forest below glowed faintly under the half-moon, mist moving like tidewater through the trees. And there, near the bend of the old fire road, a figure walked. Ranger hat. Flashlight. Steady stride. She almost called out, then stopped. Because the beam didn't cast light. It absorbed it. The figure vanished into the fog. Winter thickened. Snow muffled the valley until even the deer trails disappeared. By February, Maggie was gone too, retired quietly, no forwarding address. Locals said she'd moved down to Luray, others swore she still drove Skyline Drive at night, headlights off, window open to listen. When spring returned, a new ranger took her place, a young woman. Named Renee Coulter, fresh out of academy training. Her first week on post, she found something strange while clearing debris near mile marker 41, a leather-bound notebook half buried under pine needles. The first page bore a single sentence written in a neat, deliberate hand. To whoever keeps the hollow next, remember the quiet. The rest was blank. Renee thought little of it until her third night alone on duty. Fog rolled in around midnight, heavy and low. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in minutes. The radio hissed softly, though no one was scheduled on channel. Then came a voice, male, calm, steady. Unit 12 to dispatch. Reporting clear skies over Weaver Hollow. She frowned. Unit 12? There's no Unit 12 anymore. Static, then the same voice again. Closer this time. Balance holds. Her flashlight flickered. Through the window, she saw footprints forming in the frost outside, one after another, leading from the tree lean straight to the porch. They stopped at the door. Renee stepped forward, pulse hammering. Who's out there? Nothing. Only fog. Only silence. But when she looked down, another set of footprints had appeared, smaller. Lighter, circling the first. 2 people. Maybe more. The radio clicked on by itself. We keep what we owe. The words came in a dozen overlapping voices, male, female, young, old, until they blended into a single whisper that filled the cabin. Keeper. Outside, the wind picked up. The fog rose in spirals, forming shapes that almost resembled faces. Renee backed away. Hand on her sidearm, but the air thickened with pressure, like standing inside thunder. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The fog thinned. The cabin light steadied. On the porch, carved into the wood, was a fresh spiral no larger than her palm. It shimmered once in the lamplight and faded. Renee stared at it for a long time before turning off the radio. She wrote a brief note in the incident log, unidentified weather phenomenon, no injuries. She didn't mention the voices or the footprints that had vanished by morning. In the weeks that followed, hikers began reporting strange sights near the Skyline Drive overlooks. A ranger patrolling alone long after curfew, face hidden beneath his hat. A teenage girl walking the ridge trail barefoot, vanishing when approached. Patterns of ash found in perfect spirals at dawn, gone by noon. Park Service dismissed them as folklore. Locals called them the Watchers of Shenandoah. One humid July evening, a storm swept across the ridge. Lightning struck near Big Meadows, igniting a small brush fire. Renee led the containment crew. By dawn, the fire was out, except for one patch that refused to burn, a perfect circle of untouched moss. At its center lay Elliot's badge, blackened at the edges but whole. The serial number still legible. She pocketed it without telling anyone. That night, she placed it on the outpost desk beside the old notebook. The metal felt warm to the touch. When she looked away, the badge had rotated half a turn on its own, aligning its edge with the spiral drawn on the cover. She whispered, "What do you want from me?" The answer came not in words but in wind, the sound of trees bending, leaves rustling in a rhythm like breath. Somewhere deep in the valley, a whisper echoed. "Keep watch." Autumn returned. Fog reclaimed the valley. And travelers along Skyline Drive began to notice something strange. The rangers no longer walked in pairs. They moved one at a time, always alone, always silent. If you stopped at certain overlooks after dark, you could hear a faint sound from below, like distant voices calling up from the mist. Locals said it was just air moving through hollows. But those who listened closely swore the whispers formed words. "We remember. We keep what you left." Years later, a journalist writing about America's haunted parks came to Shenandoah to research the Weaver Hollow legend. He never published his story, but in his notebook, found months later in an abandoned motel room, he'd written a final entry. "The fog moves as if breathing. Sometimes it whispers my name, though I've never told anyone here who I am. Last night, I dreamed of a ranger standing in the mist, holding a light that swallowed the dark. He said, 'Balance holds.' When I woke, there was dirt on my boots and a spiral drawn in dew on the window. Maybe this isn't a haunting. Maybe it's a relay." At dawn, the park opened to tourists again. Families took photos at overlooks, unaware that the fog below shifted when they laughed, almost smiling back. Somewhere deep in Weaver Hollow, beneath roots and stone, a faint pulse beat once every few seconds, steady, patient, eternal. And if you stood there long enough, you might swear you heard a voice, soft, calm, watchful, whispering through the mist. Unit 12 to dispatch. The forest remembers.